Hello everyone and welcome to our webcast, Millennials are Rewriting the Future of Travel. In this webcast, you will learn how the travel industry has been greatly affected by this powerhouse generation and understand how millennials see brands differently than any other generation in order to attract this new target market. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jeff Fromm. Mr. Fromm is the president of a new millennial trends consulting unit called FutureCast. Graduate from Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania, he is a syndicated columnist for Forbes, At Age, and American City Business Journals. He's also founder of ShareLikeBuy.com, a millennial trends and emerging tech conference, and co-author of the book, Marketing to Millennials, Reach the Largest and Most Influential Generation of Consumers Ever. Before we start, I would like to let you know that we will be addressing any questions you may have at the end of the webcast, so please enter your questions in the Q&A section you will find at the bottom of your screen. Well, before hesitation, let me turn it now to Mr. Fromm for his presentation. Jeff?
Morning, everyone. My colleague, Greg Badika, over here will also be joining, and we're looking forward to sharing quite a bit of information. We'd like to start by letting you know, if you've been in the business strategy and marketing space for a long time, many of the ideas we suggest are going to require you to unlearn things that you were comfortable with because the rules are changing very rapidly in a millennial-centric economy. So with that, we'll get started, and we look forward to sharing more. So just to level set, millennials in the U.S. represent roughly 80 million people. 21% of consumer discretionary purchases are made by millennials, but they influence many decisions in retailing and restaurant, food and beverage, travel, and other categories. And it's their influence that's unprecedented. We've never seen as much influence from a generation of young consumers on older consumers. Largely birth years 1977 to 1998, but there is some data on debates on birth years, and we prefer to think about millennials from a mindset standpoint. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So millennials are not a homogeneous cohort. There are unique attitudinal segments. If you're interested in the research we've done, you can find it at millennialmarketing.com on the research tab. Some of it is available for free. In addition to the cohort being attitudinally segment, we see 4 million new millennials who are starting families in the next 365 days. And this wave of millennials who are starting families is going to change the landscape of this country in a very significant way and change brand purchase behavior in a significant way as well. So we talked briefly about the mindset before, and I'd like to elaborate on it. We see rapid change in digital, social, mobile culture. Millennials are 2.5 times more likely to be first adopters. And it's this rapid change in digital culture, meeting normal change in consumer culture, that creates the mindset. So as a result of this, we see millennials impacting lots and lots of things, even when they're not necessarily the purchaser. It's the sharing that they do, and it's the tasting that they do that causes other people to say, hey, maybe I should try that. Maybe I should engage in those behaviors. So one of the things that you have to think about is winning and setting the bar with millennials. And in order to do that, one rule you're going to have to unlearn is you're going to have to think hard about your indirect competition. It's not enough to be a favorite brand among your direct competitors, because that may end up being a losing financial proposition for you. You have to reset the bar and be a most loved brand and beat your indirect competition as well. So let's talk about a simple concept, a concept called love. I suspect many of you are familiar with this concept, right? You start dating. If things go well, you move from dating to love. If things progress, you stay in love. Unfortunately, with consumers, many times we see that they get bored. And so as a result of that, boredom, they'll get divorced. And so when we look at love, we look at factors that drive love. In the old days, we knew that awareness and regard tended to drive love. But we're going to have to unlearn that concept. In today's millennial-inspired participation economy, uniqueness and meaningfulness tend to drive love. Uniqueness will be a proxy for your pricing authority, and you have to have uniqueness to succeed, and meaningfulness or purpose and authenticity will drive your sales volume potential. So in a new era, it's not awareness alone. That's a price of admission. You have to unlearn the idea that driving awareness will drive your success, and you have to focus on being more unique and more meaningful and more authentic in order to win with this audience. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Greg Vidika, and we're going to talk about some of the simple truths that great modern brands engage in to win with millennials.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So just to kick it off, guys, I'd like to show you sort of the truths we're going to run through today. This is just a sort of navigation to see all the different trends we're going to walk through. Again, a mistake you can make with the millennial generation is generalizing, huge generalizations around a generation that is very much segmented, as Jeff alluded to. What we're saying here is these are some macro trends that are true throughout the cohort, as well as millennial parents as well. So let's dig into it with the first one here, which is truth number one: embrace the participation economy. And so for a long time, we had a definition of brand value that we were all comfortable with. It was the sum of your functional and emotional benefits divided by your price. We believe today that millennials have sort of thrown out this definition and reinvented it, reimagined it with the participation economy to look like this, where it's the sum of your functional, emotional, and participative benefits divided by your price. That added participation is really intricate to how we talk to millennials and how we communicate with them. And so let's talk about participation for a little bit here. Showing you this chart, the bottom section here is participation, and we like to break that into three different things. The co-creation of your product, the co-creation of your marketing or messaging, and the co-creation of your consumer journey. So brands that are high participation are the brands that are inviting their millennial partners to participate and co-create with them. Now on the other side, we have this idea of share-worthy, which is a little bit harder to explain. I like to show share-worthy in a slide that would say, we used to say if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, does it make a sound? And today it's more of a conversation around if I go to a concert and I didn't take a video of it and post it on Instagram and share it with my friends, did it ever really happen? It's a loaded question, and a lot of times we get a few chuckles from it, but it's the same concept when you go to any marathon or any event and you see people taking pictures of themselves and sharing those experiences. The idea here is that anything worth doing is therefore worth sharing, so if I don't share an experience, it's almost like it didn't happen. So for brands, the implication here is if I have an environment that I'm expecting a customer to have a certain experience and they don't have that level of experience or don't share that experience, it's a missed opportunity. So with the participation economy, we sort of look at the language even, and internally we should be looking for the new model language. We used to talk about things like interruption, reaction, heavy users, big promises, passive customers, but now we're using words like engagement, interaction, engaged participants, personal gestures, active co-creators, and it's a shift in the mindset on how we approach these consumers in the participation economy that's really going to help brands succeed tomorrow. The second love truth here is going to be engage early adopters. Now, real quick, a lot of times when we talk about early adopters, we'll talk about how millennials are digital native versus digitally learned. And so for anyone in the audience who has spoken a second language, you can understand sort of the concept of learned versus native in the sense that if you grew up in a culture where the language was native, it comes very naturally. If you grew up in a culture where you're learning a second language, you might be able to learn it to a certain extent, but it's never going to be intrinsic and native. And with millennials, that's the way we talk about technology. Millennials were raised in an era where technology was everywhere, and it was in every facet of their life. And so it's very much native to their culture. It's second nature. Whereas digital learned consumers maybe have a good grasp over technology, but can't implement it to the same degree that millennials can. So just in a sense on how we approach these people, we need to understand that they're able to pick up things and put them down very quickly. They're able to crowdsource information very quickly, and that information is at their fingertips, and it was never not there. So consider that when we're talking to these digital natives. Love truth number 3 here is going to be engage social communities and treat content as brand fuel. So a lot of times when Jeff and I talk to people, a lot of questions come up about social media. And we honestly believe that social media marketing is dead. And it's not to say that social media is dead at all. It's the concept of marketing on social media is dead, and it's foreign to us because we look at content strategy. Content is king today. And creative excellence used to be the powerhouse, and not to say that creative excellence isn't important anymore. It's a small piece of the pie. Content excellence needs to exist to support the creative. Social media is one avenue to deliver that content. Let's talk about this a little bit further. what is content marketing? And so it's a question we get all the time because content marketing is sort of this ambiguous thing we're talking about right now. What is content? What is content marketing? And we like to talk about it as communication people choose to spend time with. First is a forced marketing message. Force something that implies that you need an action, you need a vote. Communication people choose to want to spend time with is a whole different spin on how we're marketing and how we're communicating. The goal of content is never really to drive sales. It's content to drive relationships and ultimately loyalty, which we see over and over again does drive sales volume. So really the goal with content is to drive that loyalty, to drive that purchase intent through relationships. And so if you look at sort of the content spectrum, I'd like to break down this chart for you quickly. Down the middle here we have planned versus unplanned. And so the way we like to talk about that is for a brand, those are things my brand can plan for versus things that my brand cannot plan for. Now horizontally here we look at reactive and proactive. Again, things that my brand can be proactive for versus things I need to be reactive towards. And so if you look on the top right, we have an idea called campaign content. And most marketers are familiar with that concept. Campaign content is going to be your general marketing content, the real campaign, the meat of any campaign. And so on the flip side of it, you have social care. And social care is a little different. It's how we approach different conversations in real time, how we're treating reviews, treating users that are unhappy or maybe very happy. And then on the two other sides of the spectrum, we have these two areas called tailored content and brand newsroom. Now I'll talk about tailored content briefly, but both of these are a little bit abstract at this point. Tailored content is brands using other content, branding it themselves, and sort of tapping into a conversation that exists in real time. Tailored content a lot of times today is seen as user-generated content. If I have a customer or a user that's generating content for me, why not take advantage of that content, brand it, and repurpose it on my own platform? Now brand newsroom is just what it says. It's the ability for a brand to treat its customer base and its social sphere as a newsroom, allocating resources to being ready for real-time interactions, real-time events, and finding ways to inject the brand into conversations that are already happening. So I'd like to show you a couple examples of these. First is social care. And we work with a client, Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen does some really good work on social media. And one example was not long ago when they had a free cone day. And one of their employees tweeted this: "So not looking forward to free cone day." And you can imagine this might not have been something the Dairy Queen team wanted to see come across from an employee. But rather than try to take it down, they decided to respond with social care and say, "Hang in there, DQ family member. How long is your shift? We'll tweet you cheers on the hour." And so the dialogue continues for quite some time. Marissa tells her when she's working, please do, it would make the time better. And Dairy Queen decided to send her some nice videos to keep her motivated. And so as the dialogue continues, you can see how often Marissa was sharing this stuff. Wouldn't have made it through my 6-hour shift if it weren't for Dairy Queen's motivational tweets. And this was a very shared piece of content. And so we start noticing that social care can have a huge impact even though we're having a one-on-one dialogue. Where campaign content traditionally had the reach and the impact, social care can have just as much of an impact with more of a real person-to-person engagement. Now to talk about tailored content briefly, tailored content a lot of times we talk about user-generated content. And some brands are doing some really great things with user-generated content. Again, playing into the participation economy, inviting their customers to participate and to contribute to their marketing and messaging. I'd like to show you this short video of some user-generated content that has turned into marketing content here. And the brand we're going to be looking at is Newcastle. Has done some really great things involving participation.
For more than 80 years, Newcastle Brown Ale has been crafting delicious, mouth-watering, irresistible ads to sell you our delicious, mouth-watering, irresistible beer. We're so good at beer marketing, we can turn any photo, no matter how boring, into an ad to sell Newcastle. Which is great, because we totally blew our marketing budget by paying celebrities to pretend to drink our beer. So we now need your photos to make ads, to get people to actually drink our beer. Like this boring vacation photo, for example. Bam! Genius beer ad. Or this uninspired selfie. Wham! Viral! So send us your photos, because while making great tasting Newcastle Brown Ale is hard, making great ads for it shouldn't be. Submit your mediocre photos from August 18th till August 22nd on our Facebook or Twitter page. with the hashtag #NewcastleAdAid. And if you're lucky, we'll exploit your photo. Here are some teeny tiny terms and conditions.
To continue on here, our Love Truth 4 is going to be around creating experiences and adventures. And again, when we talked about the idea of share-worthy experiences is huge here, but the real trend we need to tap into here, a huge theme we see with millennials, is this idea that millennials crave affordable adventures. And so how are brands today really winning on this trend and showing millennials that really brands can be adventurous and provide these experiences? And so an example I'd like to show you here is one of Heineken. And Heineken, if you think about Heineken, it's a brand that doesn't necessarily live in the travel space, but why is that not in their brand authority to provide that adventure and that experience? And this is a quick video of something Heineken did to really try to drive home that idea of affordable adventures and how any day can be a unique and meaningful surprise.
And take your chances? You would have to go right now. You have to change your plans.
No way we can change these plans.
No.
This is a bachelor party.
I have to go through security, get on a plane, and go back to my real life.
You know, it really sounds tempting, but
How come you can't cancel the trip?
Because it's for work.
No, I'm afraid not.
Right now I'm going to where I have to go, so
yeah.
You know, I don't think I'm that adventurous.
Shit, why not?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Let's go.
You're gonna press the button wherever it goes. That's where you're going. You're
All right.
changing those plans and going in a heartbeat.
How committed am I to whatever comes up here? Is that where we're going?
Yes.
All right.
Here we go. We want Morocco, right? Woo! Uh-oh. Looks like Cyprus.
I'll do Cyprus.
You'll do Cyprus?
I'll do
Woo!
Cyprus.
How about Laos? How about Portugal? Thailand?
Wow. This is real, right? This is actually gonna happen.
It's so random. You're either gonna kill me or you're gonna like laugh.
Hey, Dan, what's up? It's George. Some weird news, I guess. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to make it out there, but I may make it out there sometime after I'm back from Thailand.
I have no idea what you're saying. Are you going to Cyprus right now, or you're coming home first?
No, I have to cancel my flight.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
Maybe. I don't know.
So where's the button? I'm ready to push the button. Ruffle, I'll see you later.
go home.
I'll see you later. I'm going to push the button.
Oh, I want to go home.
Let's go to Laos.
Go to Laos.
So moving forward, the next truth here is going to be around embracing disruption and the shared economy. So disruption is something that a lot of people are talking about right now, but first we'd like to sort of go into disruption a little bit on sort of how we approach it in terms of ROI and measurement. And really the idea here is that a lot of brands have core opportunities, emerging opportunities that they're looking to invest in. We like to show a quick pyramid. Again, these numbers are not static, but to say that 75%-ish of your budget should go towards these core opportunities that you feel comfortable in investing. Now, the next 20% needs to go into things that you're willing to invest in the future, emerging opportunities, things that you see promise in. Now, this top percentage, this small percentage, this blue ocean pyramid at the very top here really shows these are some game-changing ideas that aren't necessarily measurable at this time. They feel a little bit wonky. They might come from different areas of the company, and these are these really highly disruptive ideas that are different from anything we've ever done before. And you might have older marketers in the room saying, this is not what we do, and that's really where the game-changing ideas are coming from. So if you can afford to make that bet, that's how we really see disruption happening. And the two questions you need to ask yourselves are, can I afford to make that bet? And almost the better question is, can I afford not to? And so there's brands out there that are really disrupting the space, and a space that we're sort of calling the shared economy. And I threw up a couple here to just talk about some in sort of the travel space here that are saying, you know, the traditional way of doing things is not necessarily the only way anymore. And for those of you who are familiar with the Airbnb model of completely disrupting the way we're staying in hotels, Uber, who's completely disrupting the way we're really moving around any city that we're unfamiliar with, and a user review site like Yelp, where consumers have the power, given the information that is at hand, really to crowdsource all types of information wherever you are. And so these are the brands that are really giving consumers power in the participation economy and making it a shared economy of anyone has a seat at the table at this point. Let's move to our last truth here. The last thing we want to wrap it up with is standing for more than your bottom line. And this is a huge trend with millennials, something that millennials absolutely want out of the brands they consume. And so the way I like to talk about it here is storytelling versus story living. And so for a long time, brands and marketers were really great storytellers. We were great at making stories, you know, really appeal to customers. But the shift now is this idea of story living. If it's not authentic, if it's not transparent, it doesn't hit home anymore. The idea that story living is really living your story inside and out, telling pieces of it, but making sure that the whole organization in every facet really embraces the story. And so the way I like to talk about it a little bit is talking about this guy here. And if anyone recognizes this guy, that's really alarming to me, because every time I put up this guy's face, no one recognizes who he is. You put up the next picture of all these folks here, and I think they start to look a little bit more familiar. These are employees at Chipotle. The first guy I showed you was Steve Ellis. He's the CEO of Chipotle, and he wrote this: "Food is integrity." That is his brand stand. That is his mission statement. That is what Chipotle stands for. And every person in the organization has bought into this. Every person lives this idea inside and out. Every time I go into Chipotle, I can feel it. And I've never met Steve Ellis. I've never shaken his hand. He's never told me that he believes in food with integrity. But his organization lives it inside and out. And that's why consumers are so quick to follow Chipotle and quick to love Chipotle. And it's this idea that a brand that tells you what they believe in only goes so far, but a brand that lives it inside and out, really believes in it, everyone can rally behind that. Consumers don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with people who want what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. And so to wrap it up, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff here to just talk about a few things we like to ask at the end of any presentation.
So a couple things. First, most businesses have an opportunity to dramatically improve their profitability by taking the elephant in the room and discussing it. And we see time and again companies achieve outstanding financial performance by attacking issues that are very obvious issues. For example, in the optical industry, inconsistent pricing strategy is a common frustration with consumers. Warby Parker took that elephant and put it in the room. Had one of the iconic brands in the industry done it, they would have likely gotten the benefits. But they didn't, and so they were disrupted by this other brand. We see the same thing occur again and again. We see the Dollar Shave Club come along and disrupt Gillette's business because they took the elephant in the room around the cost of the razor blades and some of the other complexity that is unnecessary, and they attacked it. So each of you can likely identify an elephant in your room. And rather than ignore the elephant in the room, discuss it. Think about it. Might be an operational issue. Might be a customer service issue. Whatever it is, the bigger the elephant, if you're able to attack that issue, you're going to have extraordinary performance. There are also 5 questions that you have to ask and answer, and they're really important. So I'm going to go over them in some detail. 1, what is your brand authority? Not what product do you sell or what service do you offer. What is your brand authority? Why are consumers wearing Fitbits made by Nike instead of their healthcare provider? Can you go tell them to quiet down, Greg? Because the people at the healthcare companies didn't understand their brand authority, and so Nike said, we can provide that to consumers who are interested. We sell shoes. That's our product. That's not our brand authority. Second, what are the big unmet consumer needs? Anytime you can find unmet needs, you have the opportunity to create extraordinary value for the consumer. And when you do that, you'll create extraordinary value for shareholders. So identify unmet needs. Don't follow down the line of the other guy did this, so we'll do the exact same thing. Third, where's the opportunity for disruption? Millennials have little equity in old schemas. Don't be afraid to disrupt your business model, because there's a pretty good chance that if you do so, you'll benefit. Fourth, how are you creating uniqueness and differentiation? Uniqueness and differentiation will absolutely impact your pricing authority, and that is crucial for most of you. And the fifth is, will you co-create meaningfulness and purpose? We know millennials want purpose in their lives, and they expect brands to play a role in that process. And so to the extent you create purpose, you're going to impact your sales volume potential. The final point I want to make is we talked about the customer journey. For many consumers, the customer journey starts long before they have the purchase of the product or service, and it ends long after that purchase. So as you think about the customer journey and you start asking these questions, think about when that journey starts and when it ends, not just the moment where they're in your facility or on your premises, because the journey is far bigger than that. And that will lead to new opportunities, and many times the elephant in the room isn't the moment of purchase. It's something before or after that. So I really appreciate your giving us time. We wanted to leave plenty of opportunity for Q&A, and with that, feel free to ask either Greg or I questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff and Greg. It was a fantastic presentation, and I'm sure our participants are finding your content and videos very valuable and inspiring. So we have great questions coming from the audience, so let's start with the first one. The first one is coming from a gentleman in Mexico, and his question is, how do I decide whether or not millennial consumers are important to my business?
Well,
Jeff, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so I don't know what kind of a business the gentleman from Mexico has. We find that many of our clients have older consumers who are very important to their business. And you have to hug and maintain those relationships with those older consumers. At the same time, many of those same clients have to attract the next generation of consumers in order to drive sales growth, because they've already done a good job building their business with those older core consumers. So without knowing enough about the business, it's hard to answer the question specifically. But philosophically, I would look for the common threads between millennials and your older core consumers and how to leverage the equities among those common threads in order to drive extraordinary performance.
Just to add to that, I think the question itself, and it's a question that we're familiar with fairly often, and people come to us and ask, really, are millennials important to me? And if you go back to the way we describe the millennial mindset, it's not necessarily trying to capitalize on a specific group of people, but trying to understand the trends and build your brand in a way for it to exist in the future, exist in modern consumption. And so it's not necessarily to say, I want millennials to consume my brand, I want to partner with these young people, but it's really to say, how are millennials reshaping the way we're seeing consumers behave and seeing the attitudes towards consumption. And I think that's the real opportunity, is to understand the trends and not necessarily target a specific group, but reform your brand and reimagine your brand authority around what modern consumption looks like.
Great. Thank you. Our second question is about consumption behaviors. And the question is, as millennials age, what are some major implications related to their changing consumption behaviors? Will they be more, less, like older generations as they grow up and start families?
So we have a new book coming out next year on the new American family. It's called Millennials with Kids. It'll be out in the spring. We did research among 11.3 million consumers at a household level. We will see some changes. Traditionally, millennials are far more likely than non-millennials to share private information about themselves in exchange for benefits. As millennials age, they will be a little less likely when they have children. So it'll be defined by children, not marriage or age in particular, according to these data sets. They will still be more likely than older generations, however. So I think at a macro level, this is a very pragmatic generation. They will trade up and trade down for brands that matter, and so they will spend more money and spend less money to make their total purchases align. And if the brand is not doing a great job, they'll trade down to private label, and the brand's doing a great job, they'll trade up for the brand experience. So thinking about your customer journey becomes crucial. Thinking about another facet around content, which Greg discussed at length. Your best consumers, the ones who are willing to pay more for your products and services, will tend to consume more of your content. Social media is a delivery channel. Content needs to engage, inform, and inspire them. And there is a strong correlation between the amount of content they consume and their purchase behavior. So as they age, we expect them to be a little less willing to share private information, but more than older generations. We expect them to be more pragmatic, and we expect them to trade up and trade down based on brands that create value. They're a very savvy group of folks, and they will process more information from brands and from peers in order to make those decisions than prior generations were able to process.
Great. Now we have a question from a marketing professional from California, and he says, I am a B2B marketer. How do I apply these trends against my goals and objectives?
That's a fabulous question. We started this as a B2B marketing strategy, and our belief is that the future of B2B marketing will be about, in many ways, creating content that informs a consumer who is going to make a purchase of a B2B product or service. And so that content pool needs to be very searchable, and it needs to be deep enough both in short and long form content that it changes the sales cycle, helping to bring in more leads, increase the speed with which people go through the sales cycle, and provide confidence to the buyer. We use millennialmarketing.com as a platform for that purpose. We attract tens of thousands of visitors to that B2B site. We provide short and long form content. We provide research reports. And we do that because we know that people are looking for expertise. And so you have to look at what your brand authority is. What are the unmet content needs of your B2B prospects and customers, and how do you fill that gap? Nobody was reporting on millennial consumer trends. We're a small company. We decided we could be the biggest on the planet on this topic, even though we're a very small company, by reporting on millennial consumer trends. Hope that helps a little bit. Happy to talk more about it with that individual.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. We have another question. This comes from a travel agency from Europe, and the question is, I am a mature brand with an older core user. How do I take these new principles and apply them to my business without alienating my existing core consumer base?
It's a fabulous question. It's one of the most commonly asked questions we receive. The reality is, when we've done work with mature, iconic brands, we strongly encourage them to keep doing the things that are working, that work for their older core consumer, but reimagine the value proposition to a younger consumer and reimagine the communications channels that they're going to use and the content that they're going to consume, because it may be very different. And so if your older consumer is in their 50s or perhaps even older than that, then you're going to need to have things that appeal to them. And the product itself may need to be different for the younger consumer. The content may need to be different. The delivery may need to be different, because the younger consumer is more capable of processing more information online or from their mobile phone, which is really nothing more than a modern-day Swiss Army knife. And they will use that modern-day Swiss Army knife to make decisions and gather information. So reimagining your brand authority around providing really useful information is going to probably be important if you're a mature, iconic brand.
Excellent, thank you. And it seems we have a last question coming in, and this comes from the representative of a specialty clinic in Canada. And her question is, when implementing these strategies, how do I measure my ROI?
Well, the question is, first question is, how are you going to measure success? Are you measuring sales growth, EBITDA growth, some other metrics? And in terms of measuring ROI, some of the early stage metrics can be around engagement levels. We look at a variety of factors. For example, if the blog site attracted 5,000 visitors at the beginning of the year in the first week, are we attracting 10,000 visitors this week? We look at how much time spent on content, and we look at where the content comes from. And that's all important to us. So for example, last week, London, Toronto, and Sydney were 3 of the top 10 cities for that blog. And some of the articles were being consumed by people spending as much as 9 and 10 minutes on them. Others were only being 1 and 2 minutes. Well, the 1 and 2 minute articles are obviously not as effective and relevant as the articles that are being spent, where people are spending 9 and 10 minutes. So you have to look at all the analytics available to you, and frankly, in many cases, create new portals and delivery methods. We would not use a corporate website to deliver content because it wouldn't create enough separation. So you have to think about the assets. I think the fundamental way would be to look at your paid, your owned, and your earned assets and measure your paid, your owned, and your earned assets in ways consistent with your usage. Overall, our thesis would be to move more dollars away from paid and more into earned and owned if you want to improve your uptake with this millennial cohort. And each business is going to have to look at how their business metrics are aligned to their marketing metrics, but they're basic analytics tools that will allow you to look at what's happening, and you should be looking at them on a frequent basis.
Right, and just to add, I think one of the most significant points that Jeff has made today is to talk about how awareness used to be sort of the biggest KPI that we used to measure against, and today we have to look at new KPIs, and whether that's something related to awareness or something maybe related more towards intent to recommend a brand or an experience, and looking at those KPIs and setting those KPIs and measuring them against what you are defining your success, being comfortable around those KPIs and saying that that's going to be the way we're measuring our success versus just sales growth really puts you in a different position to see some real growth in other areas that are less measurable. So again, it's finding those right measurement or metrics here to measure against your definition of success.
And I think I would even add, since everyone has a different business, it's easy to look at things like, well, we tripled our visitor traffic to Millennial marketing, so that's great. But I also look at, hey, we have 3 cities in the top 10 that were not in the top 10 before that are international cities. That's awesome too. I also want to look at engagement metrics around time spent with content. And then I look at things like Greg said, around intent to recommend and factors like that. So you want to create a dashboard, and that dashboard needs to be highly correlated to the business metrics and the activities that you're putting in place. And you can start with basic things and then get more sophisticated things if you have the appetite and budget to engage in more sophisticated kinds of metrics.
Excellent. Well, I think at this point we have covered most of the questions. Thank you again, Jeff and Greg, for your valuable insight. We still welcome our participants to send us questions over email. So if, Jeff, you can provide your email address, that way our participants can write you directly, that would be great.
Yes. So feel free to email either Greg or myself or both at the email address there. And for those of you who want a little better understand some of the structure, we use Millennial Marketing as our content hub. Our corporate website, thefuturecast.com, is more of a traditional brochure site. And we get most of our traffic to the content hub. And that drives the economics of this B2B business. So I want to encourage some of you to really reimagine the idea that you can have multiple properties for multiple purposes. And really thank you for including us in your conversation today. So if you have questions, don't be bashful. And if you want to access the content, millennialmarketing.com.
And we will also share this webcast, which has been recorded, to all the participants that would like to see it again or share with your colleagues. So thank you so much, Greg, Jeff, and everyone that has participated in this webcast. We hope you can join us in the next one. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.